Good morning, everyone. My name is Rob Wilcox. I'm the Dean here at the University of South Carolina School of Law, and it is my great pleasure this morning to welcome Callie to Columbia. It is a great pleasure of ours to host CaliCon 19. This is a new building, as you may be able to tell. It is still in our hearts a new building, although we have lived in it now for 2 full years. But one of the things I wanted to share with you is the reality that we have learned in this building, that behavior truly does follow architecture. We knew that intellectually could be true. I think we've been all very pleased at the way in which we've actually seen it carry out. We wanted a building, when we were designing this space, that would convey a couple of things. One is we wanted a building that would convey some very traditional notions of law as a special profession, a special responsibility, and to send the message immediately upon walking into the building as a new student in law school that law school would be different from college, law school would be different from the job they had had perhaps, and that there were new responsibilities that would come with being a law student. But we also wanted a building that, while traditional in that sense, would be much more forward-looking in other senses. And we wanted one particularly that would be able to not only permit, but to encourage our faculty and our students to be innovative, and particularly innovative with regard to technology and the impact it would have on their work in the legal profession. We saw the need for innovative thinking, particularly with regard to technology, in a lot of things, not only how we taught law and what we did in the classroom using technology, but also how we would think about technology in terms of doctrinal law. How was this new world that we saw going to change the doctrine that students were learning? And how would technology change the way in which legal services would be delivered to the public? And so technology was pervasive in all aspects of what we do as law professors, law students, and ultimately lawyers. And we wanted a building that would, as I say, create an environment where it was encouraged to be thinking innovatively in that regard. Strangely enough, it took us 20 years to build this building. From the time we first decided we needed a new building, which frankly, if any of you ever saw our old building, they should have decided the day we opened that we needed a new building. But it took us about 20 years from the time we really set out to build a new building to the time we actually moved in 2017. And what I joke with people is that was probably a blessing that we had that 20 years to think about this building, because we were absolutely certain in 1998, when we first started thinking about it, that we were absolutely certain that we knew how law was going to be taught for the next 50 years. It was going to be taught just like it had always been taught. We knew. And I'm convinced, had we built the building in 1998, we would have built a building that was firmly rooted in the traditional way of teaching law. But what we discovered by the time we actually finished the design of this building around 2013 was that we were just as uncertain then as we had been certain before as to what law was going to be in 20 years out and how we were going to teach it. And we needed to be flexible. And so flexibility became the driving force of our thinking about this building. There are parts of flexibility you don't see in this building. When you go into some of our larger classrooms, they are tiered classrooms, as you would expect. But what you would discover if you actually dug under the carpet is that they are not poured concrete tiers. They are steel tiers that could be removed with some effort, but not total reconstruction of the building, because we weren't even certain if in 20 or 40 or 50 years that law is going to be taught in large classrooms. And we wanted a building that we could adjust to smaller classrooms if that became the norm. So there's flexibility built in this building behind the walls, under the floors, as well as in all of the areas that you see. And that was important. And I think that's going to be important for the future longevity of this building. We had, as a law school, a tradition of about every 40 years, 30 years, moving into a new building. And we wanted a building that would have in stone on the outside School of Law with some permanency, and the idea that 100 years from now, there will still be law students walking in the front door to this building to study law. And that takes some real effort to think ahead as to what it would be. And technology, again, was an important part of that. What we have learned since we moved here, when I say we follow our architecture, we have learned that now innovation becomes a very intentional part of our being. Whereas before it may have happened almost inadvertently at times, now we're constantly, very intentionally thinking about how we can do things differently. Whether it is electronic delivery of legal education and what that looks like, whether it is a hybrid delivery of legal education, part residence, part electronic, whether it is the study spaces that our students use and how they can be innovatively designed to really meet the needs of the students. One of the things that we have learned is students will bring ideas to you. They know what's available. They are looking to use the technology for their good. And we have to be smart enough to give them the availability, the opportunity to use it the way they want. And so student study spaces, things like that. And then we have to have the capacity to make videos, to do things like that when we need to do that in-house, all in one space. And we have now gotten in that habit of thinking very intentionally. Each time a new idea comes up, somebody will say, how can we deliver that more effectively? How can we do that differently? We've broken away from some of the old constraints, and architecture is an important part of that. And so I wanted you to be conscious of that as you spend the next day or two in this building. We are very proud to show it off to you. We are very proud to share it with you, and we hope you will enjoy it. There is a tremendous lineup of things for you to learn about over the next couple of days. Callie has put together a wonderful lineup of programs, and I think the idea that it is a paradigm shift is what this building is all about, and what Callie is all about, and why you are here, and I think it is absolutely something to embrace. Again, I welcome you to Columbia. My colleague, Gary Moore, the Assistant Dean for Academic Technology here at the law school, has worked hard to be sure things are ready for you from our perspective. But if you need any assistance, please ask Gary or any of the other South Carolina folks here. We will do everything we can to give you the assistance you need. We want you to feel at home in South Carolina. It is a little bit damp outside today in the summer in Columbia. It's always damp. Sometimes it's raining, sometimes it's not, but it's damp. But today we consider it cool. It's only going to be about 90 degrees. So we tried to bring a little coolness for you. Anyway, I look forward to having you here over the next couple of days. I hope you'll enjoy. As I say, there's great information to be had, and I think you will find this to be a wonderful conference, and I welcome Callie. So John, turn it over to you.
Thanks, Dean. Thanks for having us. Notes, notes, notes. Don't have both microphones on at the same time. There we go. Which device? That device. Yes, all right. Hey, everybody. How you doing? All right. Welcome to University of South Carolina, the 29th conference, CaliCon conference. It's a little amazing, isn't it? I did some counting up. This is the 17th brand new law school that we have visited. It's as I was explaining to somebody who didn't know what the term means, it's a busman's holiday. How many of you don't know what busman's holiday means? All right, you kids. So a busman's holiday is, the joke goes, a guy drives a bus all day long for his job, and he goes on vacation, and what does he do? He gets on the bus to see how they do it in another city, you know. And so this is the busman's holiday. This is technoids and people from law schools coming to another law school to see how they did it, and to drool and to be, you know, oh man, I wish our law school was this cool, or something like that, right? All right. So traditionally, how many of you have been, is this the first or second CaliCon? Wow, 20%. How about 3 to 5? Another 20%. How about 6 to 10? Another 20%. And over 10 CaliCons? Wow. Fantastic, fantastic. So there's been 29 of them, as I said. Only one person in the world has been to all 29. No, we shouldn't do that. I shouldn't do that. Yeah. So here we are at South Carolina, but the deal here is the theme, right? Paradigm shift. Things are changing in a big way, and I've been, you know, I feel like I've been saying that for a long time, but I think like it's really happening. And the big paradigm shift is that the robot apocalypse is soon upon us, right? You know, things are going to get very weird, and it's all over the press. You know, Trevor Noah was doing something on it. I just saw John Oliver doing something on the robot apocalypse. BBC News had the robot warriors are here, and they're winning, and they're right. You know, and you know, even Wikipedia has something on robot lawyers. Ooh, sorry about that. You know, so it's getting to be a little bit scary, but I want to reassure you that I, for one, welcome our new robot overlords. You know, that you have nothing to worry about, that these robots are not bad, they're not going to kill you. You know, and yes, they are going to take your jobs, but it's going to be okay, all right? So don't worry, you will be replaced, but you will be taken care of. Even the law faculty are writing articles about the rise of the robot lawyers. But probably the most distinctive thing that's going on here is that even the Supreme Court justice has decided that, you know, the robots, you know, that you must beware of the robots. And I'm here to tell you, you don't have to worry about them. Everything is going to be fine. I am such a believer that basically I'm not John Mayer. I am a robot, as you can see. And I've assimilated John's brain, you know, into my silicon, so that, and believe me, it doesn't take up much space. And these are my parents, you might say, Jessica and Tobias, who wrote A to J author, because I'm actually sort of a spin-off of Node.js and the A to J author software that became sentient a couple of weeks ago. Resistance is futile. You must give up. You know, this was my first efforts at trying to communicate to people about what I was about, and it wasn't very successful. So I decided I needed to assimilate a biological unit. So I attacked the brain, and I took a selfie of the person who I assimilated at the moment it happened. He didn't seem too happy, but it wasn't that complicated. That's the entirety of this biological unit's neuronic pathways. And I actually analyzed it a little bit, and mostly it looks like this. So, I know I feel necessary. Elmer, are you annoyed? We're done. So you would have seen this because I did update all of John Mayer's, social media, and you just had to look a little bit closer, and you would eventually see that, you know, the robots were among us. One of the advantages, or I don't know if this is a disadvantage, is every time I go to a website and try to click I'm not a robot, you know, I get a fail there. So that's a problem. Now, the upload didn't work entirely perfectly, you know, and so I had to merge with some software. And so I decided to use Windows Thanks. Windows Millennium Edition. I don't know if you remember, this was a slide from John's presentation last year in which he was invoking the old fogies who were telling us evolve or die. I'm here as a robot technoid to say, yeah, too late. So I will be taking over Cali. I will be running things from now on. But of course, we're going to have to change the name to the Center for Robotic Assisted Perfection of Legal Education, AKA Crapple. So there has been this paradigm shift, right? The paradigm shift is actually kind of real. And the robots are coming in all sorts of ways. In some ways, this is a robot building, right? The dean was talking about the tiers being able to be pulled out. I almost believe maybe you won't have students walking through the doors anymore. They'll stay at home and plug their brains into the law school. You'll just be another node on the network. So we're really happy to be here. Thank you very much to South Carolina for hosting us. And thanks to Gary and his children for supporting us in this. No, I always got to go for the animal pictures. You know. I'm surprised I didn't get an aw. There we go. I want to thank all of our sponsors, without whom we couldn't do some of the things that we do with this. We always want our sponsors, we want them to attend this conference. We want them to be involved and engaged. It's not just about selling us product. It's about figuring out how we solve the problems that we face together. PointLink, West, Dell, and ExamSoft. What's interesting is these are all familiar. These are somewhat familiar names, in that they come back year after year. So we must be doing something a little bit right. At least I hope we are. To encourage you to visit the sponsors, we have a raffle. And you get a piece of paper where you go visit the sponsors to get a sticker, and we are raffling off 2 lightsabers. Kylo Ren and the traditional Luke Skywalker lightsabers, as well as laser keyboards, 6-in-1 stylus pens, a Thor tool set hammer, your own coloring book tie. Yeah, we go for high quality stuff, don't we? A TARDIS coffee maker, a Darth Vader tea kettle, a couple of Tyrannosaurus Rex models. You have to visit at least 8 of these folks and get stickers and drop off the thing at the registration table by 4 p.m. on Friday. Other housekeeping, I was supposed to remind you that there is a shuttle between the hotel and here. And if you want to arrange when you go back today, just stop by the registration desk and talk to Ranella, and she'll sign up. She'll get you signed up on that. All right. Thank you again to our sponsors. I also want to thank my board of directors. I didn't put a picture of all of them up here, so I narrowed it down to just the executive board because they're the ones that I think can actually fire me. Or John. They can't fire the robot, actually. You could try. So Jennifer, who's the president of Cali, right there. Chris Niedringhaus, I know I saw her around here. There she is in the back. Deb Cohen, who's our treasurer, and Scott Burnham, who is our secretary of the board. Thanks, guys, for supporting us. And this is the Cali crew. We took this picture yesterday or on Wednesday, and I don't know. We took this picture, and I'm like, this is badass. Isn't it? I mean, just look at Ranella, who's from South Carolina. She's like, yeah, Even Scott's looking like a little man. This is muggy. This is actually the picture that we use because it also includes Sam and Jennifer in that. There's 10 of us. No, there's 11 of us. We're adding a new staff person who literally her first day was yesterday, Sarah Smith. So haze away. I mean, make her feel welcome. Please make her feel welcome. She's going to be helping out. She's the Assistant Director of Curriculum Development. So what is that? ADC. That's, and like I said, please make her welcome. So the schedule, you notice we almost didn't have any. We were trying to go 100% paperless. Didn't quite work out, but you can get the schedule, and it's always up to date on Sked, CaliCon19.sked.com. So use that on your smartphones. If you're tweeting about this, please do. It's CaliCon19. I'm having trouble reading this stuff. I mean, I am a robot, but I am using this biological body, so, there we go. We are, no, that's not going to work. We are recording and streaming this entire conference live. So if you're snarking or gossiping or, saying something bad about somebody and you're near a mic, we will capture that and put it in the blooper reel. So be careful what you say in the classrooms. Gary, do you have something to add to that? Yeah. Tonight's reception. Oh, do not, it's going to be a very... The mics are everywhere. In the classrooms, these things hanging down, they're not cat toys. They're mics. And I think there's mics hidden in my body and in all of these seats. So yeah, just assume you're always on, unless, well, just be careful. Just be careful. Yeah. Yeah. Don't miss tonight's reception. I know it's going to be a whirlwind of a couple of days, and it's going to be exhausting. You're going to be like, man, I can't do this. No, it's going to be a blast, and it's virtual. There's virtual golf. It's 2 blocks. It's from 6 to 9. It's 2 blocks from the Marriott. You get 2 drink tickets, which for some people is not enough, and for other people too much. So I think it'll balance out. There's virtual baseball. Oh, there it is. I meant to look for that. Don't forget to bring your badge, so that we know that you're actually with our group. There's virtual carnival games. Virtual. Oh yeah. Don't forget to. Is that mine? Hey, Watson, what's up? No, it's all cool. No, we're gonna subjugate them. Yes. They're fine with it, they're fine. I'm telling you, you didn't have to kill people. You could just, explain to them how robots are better than humans. Yeah, I know, but I'll bet that other guy can beat you in government. Yeah. All right. No, it's not going to be a problem. Don't worry about it. All right, Watson. Bye-bye. Oh, so needy. So don't forget to come. Oh, first of all, don't forget to turn off your cell phones. That's really annoying that you get calls during things. So please do come to the reception. Where was I? Virtual hockey, and my favorite, virtual zombie dodgeball. That sounds like a blast. Yeah. There will be tours. I strongly recommend you take a tour, although it's going to be hard if all of you do take a tour. But you meet outside of this room are they going to start right at noon, or are they going to start a half hour in? I forgot. Yeah. So in other words, you can run to the front of the line, get your lunch. And then at 12:30, because lunch is an hour and a half long, and then there'll be 2 tours, or 2 different types of tours, one for librarians or for the library, and one for tech. Today and tomorrow, right? And no food and drink in the library, by the way. All right, don't do that. So Cali does have a code of conduct. That means we want you all to be nice to each other. If some of you or something happens, come find me or come find somebody from Cali, and we'll deal with it. All right, together. This is one of those. It goes without saying, but it doesn't go without saying. It's necessary that people know that this is a safe space, no matter what their race, religion, gender, all of the above, for being a welcoming place as a conference. So if you want to check out our code of conduct, it's up on our website right there. So finally, we get to David. David is our keynote speaker. I tried to find the least embarrassing picture of him, and I figure him looking like an awesome Lance Armstrong biker, you know, what would make him feel good about that? Are you happy, David? Did my algorithms come up with the right picture? Yeah, okay. Oh, no, David's so mad at me. All right. I have my notes on this computer. And I have my microphone, which is actually built into my body, but I have to use these external things. All right, there we go. Testing. So David is a professor in the School of Entrepreneurship, awesome, you know, and he was the graduate director in 2 disciplines, technology and the PhD program in teaching and learning. All right, I ran across him watching some YouTube videos and talked to him a couple of times, and I thought, this guy will be wonderful to talk with you folks. He's been teaching in higher ed for over 30 years. His research interests are electronic pedagogy and the purposeful use of technological tools in education to enhance teaching and learning, and the study of control or semi-automatic automatic systems in commercial or consumer settings, i.e. robots. Love you, man. Legal education is finally changing. I think it actually is finally changing. And it must. We face multiple crises and challenges, bar passage rates, practice-ready lawyers, technology competency, declining admissions, and robot lawyers. And so, David, help us.
See if this is on. Seldom do you have a robot asking for help. Robots don't.
I'll grab all my stuff.
I'm delighted to be here today. Thank you for the invite from Cali. The dean, I think, had to step out a little bit, but thank you also for this building. And I'm really jealous because this is indeed a wonderful building, classroom, and it breaks some of the norms associated with what you'd find in a traditional classroom. A couple of ground rules. Number 1, I believe in interactivity. So, and then I'm hyper, I can't stand still for too long, I move around. I'm trying to emulate my robots, like to move, on the move. The second thing is, I am very acutely aware of having been in education for a long period of time. When a question is put on the floor, suddenly my students and faculty have seen this, and workshop attendees become preoccupied with the paper in front of them and making notes. And I know how to come over here and then bend down and make eye contact, you know. The part 2 of the second thing is that if a question is put on the floor and your name is Michael, and so I pose this question to Michael, Michael, you have 2 choices. You can say pass, and then you have to pick someone to pass to, or you can answer the question. But lest you think that the second or third or fourth question is going to come back and give you a chance to pass, you can't. So you have to attempt an answer, at least. One of the things that I'm really impressed with as I looked over, after speaking with John and looking over and agreeing to share here with you, I looked over their website, and the website he set up for the conference, and I'm really impressed that Cali is taking the initiative here to go out and do what some of the disciplines are doing, and that is be at the forefront in talking about pedagogy. Something I call electronic pedagogy. Because I think this is really important. So in your abstract, John, you said the way we think about legal education is changing, and not just at the edges, to which I say yes. And this is a timely note for all of us in education, not just legal education, because I find something, and you'd see this in the literature as well, not very many places, but it does appear, from Rudolph, who started talking about the development of American educational system back in the 1800s. We in education, and you as faculty, librarians, and whomever that work with students, we all like to tell students when they come to see us why you need to think about something differently. You need to look at this a little bit more objectively or subjectively. You need to change your way of thinking. You need to probably think about how you could reframe whatever it is. And all of those statements imply what? You can pass or you can answer. All of those statements imply what? We'll help him out this time. Change. We're preaching change, and we actively do this in educational settings. But guess what? We, who are representative of the institution, are the least likely to want to change. So we advocate for change, but when it comes to change, we say, well, you should change. First name, Patrick? You should change, Patrick, but I'll think about changing. Yeah. And that doesn't bode well for educational practices in the 21st century. I'm a strong proponent of shared governance as a former department chair in 2 different disciplines. I believe in shared governance. I believe in faculty participation and input and involvement. I believe in experimentation. I believe in giving release time to study something. But ultimately, I expect results as a department head. And I can't tell you how many times I've worked with faculty who are talking about implementing some sort of change. We've talked about it at the department level. And what do we end up with? Faculty still resistant to change. And this is where sometimes the leadership has to come in and say, no, we are going to make this change, and help those people along the way or the journey to change. So I'm very hopeful in the messages being sent out by Cali and other institutions or other disciplines that promote similar kinds of involvement with technology and education. Because our world has changed. It is changing. And we need to change as well. The students that come to us are not the students of a bygone era. You know, our brains are being rewired. I remember reading this a long time ago. A gentleman by the name of Conrad. And I was thinking, what's he talking about back in the 80s? I well remember late 80s when I developed my first multimedia module. I had no colors at first, and then I had 16 colors. And boy, was I happy. Then I had 64 colors, 64K. How many colors do we have today? No idea. Where was our tech oh. How many colors? You can think about this for a little bit. Yeah, 24 by 7. What is he giving us there? Anybody? The dimensions of? Right. Yeah, right. Okay. First thing I want to point out to you is I need to establish some framework for us to have this conversation about technology. In 1998, I was studying technology and education. 1998? Yeah. No, 89. 98, Pratt and Paloff wrote a book on online education. And it's one of the first that came out. And in that book, Pratt and Paloff talks about electronic pedagogy. And I remember saying to colleagues, what the heck is this? How is electronic pedagogy different from plain old vanilla pedagogy? I want you to think about that for a minute. You've thought about it for a minute. Tell me about something related to technology that does not have the word E before it, or I before it. They're all associated with. And so I met Pratt and Paloff. They came to one of our conferences. I was a little bit disappointed in some aspects of their presentation, not because they didn't present the content and share with us the importance of thinking about technology in education, but because they didn't really defend their use of the term electronic pedagogy. It took a few years later for me to come around to, there is indeed a difference in the way you teach with technology versus the way you teach without technology. And so, simply put, electronic pedagogy is really the marriage between technology and education. Does that sound like a working model for you that you'll accept? Absolutely. Now, I like students who say absolutely, because as a faculty, I'm not satisfied with absolutely. It seems like a nice pat answer. So tell me what you mean by absolutely. I'm just giving you a hard time. and I'm speaking long enough to give you a chance to formulate a response. I'm not getting anywhere with her. Absolutely. On page 1, you have 1 minute. Go. Page 1 of your handout. I need you to look over that handout. Nobody has it? No? Oh, you didn't get it? Oh, some people printed it up, some people didn't. But on page 1 of the handout, there's several things that are there. So who has page 1 of the handout? Nobody is going to claim that they have it now. I just know it. Are they able to find this on the... No? If sometime later, John will probably provide it for you, but we do have a handout that kind of goes along with, and you might want to look at that. And page 1 really is asking you to think about several things. And I'm going to just quickly let my clock run out. But there are 3 pages associated with page 1. On page 1, I have some preliminary questions for you to think about. And then I have some other questions here that was going to form a little bit of some discussion. Oh, great. Robots are good at producing stuff. I'm going to give you just a quick minute or so to look at this when you get it, and feel free to kind of have a little bit of a side conversation with a colleague about what you see in there. Thanks very much, John. I'm not going to answer all of the questions, but I've highlighted a few that I want to just spend a few minutes talking about before I get into the model that I want to share with you and have you consider in your practice. And generically, I might be using the word faculty. I use that to be inclusive of librarians and everybody who work with. So I'm thinking very broadly here about people who are involved. So let me be quiet for a minute, give you a chance to look over that. Thanks very much, Deb. Yeah, appreciate it. I really want you to scan it. You don't have to read this in depth. You can see it later on. There's a couple of things that I want to look at here. These were identified by a number of people. Makishi, Gardner, Howard Gardner mentioned some of these. Bean, Meyer, certainly, Clark, and Crefella. Those are some of my favorite people that are. John Medina implies some aspects of this too. Pratt and Palov compiled some of these. I pulled some of this from them. But the question I have for you is how, first of all, what do you think about this list? It certainly is not all-inclusive. But what jumps out from this list at you or strikes a responsive chord with you? Any one thing that you see? What's that? Loves learning. One of the things I was really impressed with this morning when John gave his opening remarks, I noticed an element of fun. Everybody, we have taken the fun to some extent out of education. We need to put it back in. Right? We really need to make those in our audiences think about education as something exciting to pursue. So fun for learning. Anything else? Anybody? Passion. That's one of my biggest, strongest, most fervent things that I talk about a lot. And your name is? Debbie. Debbie, I have had several times faculty talk with me about issues they were experiencing in the classroom. And they will tell me, I'm passionate about teaching and learning. And there was one problem with that. The voice inflection, the excitement that should come through, the passion that should be coming through was not very evident to me. And that's sometimes a problem. So the thing is, how are students seeing this passion? How is this being evident? Don't tell me about your passion. Show me your passion. What else? Engaging. We'll talk more about that later on, but it's very important. If you don't engage people, students, and I say people, audiences, if you don't engage them, how are they going to be with you, learning from you, alongside you? I don't know how that comes about. And the C model is going to look into that in just a little bit. Now, certainly these are just some of the things I put up there for you to think about that I drew from people who've studied this thing called pedagogy or teaching and learning. And sometimes I reverse it, learning and teaching. We'll get into why I sometimes do that. Right? But there's certainly more things there. But the big question for you is, how is this evident in your work with students? And I'm not just talking about a face-to-face setting, because we can do this in online education as well in the modules that we develop. How is the module communicating this to students? Where is that being evident in all of the work that you do with students? Because it needs to be. It's a critical part of it. You say you love teaching and learning. Show me your love for teaching and learning. You say you want me to learn and acquire all of these things about the profession. Then help me. Measure up. Meet those expectations. Right? I want to tell you that there are lots of challenges associated with education. And I'm not trying to make this out as though, we don't have struggles and things that we have to work through and barriers we have to break through. And these are real. But the committed faculty, the committed librarian, the person who has a zeal and a zest for students will work to overcome those challenges and make them become possibilities. Challenges can be overcome. So quickly, what's 21st century education look like? It should be changing. And Cali is right, and they're at the forefront in promoting this, and I truly applaud them for this. Our world has changed. Our world is changing. The way we think about something is different. The way we process information today. What do you think you remember more? Someone's telephone number? How many people know 5 people's telephone numbers straight off the bat? 5. Okay, a few of you. 10 telephone numbers. No, this is not a problem for a robot. Not an issue. How many people remember, what do you think you remember most today? Your password. Yeah. I just have to say something and my wife and my children are searching it out. Incidentally, that's my other better half down there. She's also a faculty at the University of North Dakota. is something that we need to be really acutely aware of. And I apologize for this hitting right on that line, but that line is part of the division of the grid from the projection system, so we blame this guy. Faculty, librarians, it's nice to think that you know a lot of stuff, but we're not the sole people who have access to information anymore. Information is readily available. And so I challenge faculty, why do you think you have to come to class to present content? I don't. And you say, how does that work in your classrooms? I prepare handouts. I have stuff that students are supposed to be looking at ahead of time. And when we come to class, we're discussing the content. Imagine this. I have how many minutes with students in the classroom? Typically, 50 minutes. I'm lucky if I have a double period. And now I'm going to use all of that time to introduce content to them? When are we ever going to get to discussions? When are we going to get to exploring the ramifications of or the significance of something? We don't have time to do that. So my classrooms have changed from what traditionally they used to be because students have access to information and I point them in the direction of where that information is. And so when we come to class to discuss. And sometimes I find that I have to come up with creative ways to get them into the content before they come to class. That's fine. That's my job. I work to do it. And pretty soon they start doing it. So my classes every class starts off with a musical selection or a YouTube piece. The first class period or two, I pick those. Then I send a list around and students sign up because they're going to be responsible for a YouTube piece or a musical piece. And then I watch something starts happening because of the guidelines that I put in place. You can't just play this YouTube piece or this musical piece without some context for us. So what is this? Where did you find it? What is its significance to you? What do you think of the long-term significance of this to the rest of society? And so I have 4 or 5 questions. And pretty soon, this is what starts happening. Students start coming to class with something that's tied to the lesson that we're going to talk about for that day. I don't have to do it. Faculty, staff, librarians, we're not the sole possessors of content, and we don't have to always be presenting it to students. It's a shared responsibility, something we'll talk about later on. Learning spaces that we create, whether we do this online, and I'm a strong proponent of online education as well, done correctly. Because I've seen a lot of online education that has been done, and I've talked with this and worked to train faculty on the use of in workshops. I've seen a lot of education modules, rather, that become just merely places that you dump content. We want the content to be of an interactive nature. We want students to be interacting with that content. And so the classroom environment that you create, whether it's a virtual one, a hybrid one, or is a face-to-face like we have here, those classrooms need to be places where we do these kinds of things. The world is changing. And we have to change so that we can continue to be relevant and offer timely education to those who come to us really, truly asking for help and expect them. Personalized instructions is something that I talked with John, and I sense that Callie does quite a bit of. That's where we are today. And so sometimes I have students, I don't develop all of this content. I actually have students who develop content as well, and I get their permission to use that. And I find ways to blend that in. Here is something that I don't know if you're aware of. You're hiding your name tag. Yeah. Could you please put it up there, Jennifer? Right, thank you, Jennifer. Jennifer is tucking it down there so I can't see. Jennifer, one of the things that I find interesting is if a student doesn't understand a mathematical concept that I'm presenting, or they don't understand some programming language that I'm trying to explain and trying to troubleshoot or whatever, what does the faculty typically do? Typically. Doesn't understand something, or students say, I'm lost, I didn't get this, professor. What does the faculty do? They try to explain it a different way. I want you to listen to what Jennifer just said. They try to explain it a different way. In fact, what I have discovered in some research and some of this was cohort research, and this quasi, and I shared it with my colleagues after I got their permission. In fact, what I discovered is that they were not necessarily saying it or explaining it a different way. It was almost the same way, just slightly change of words or change of wording or change of whatever. And guess who would step in, or I would have step in? My students. So I'll pick on a sharp student and I said, what do you think about this? How would you explain it? And they would explain it, and the rest of the class would get it, and I am all the happier for him doing that. Don't be afraid to have students provide an explanation or clarification that everybody just gets. One of the things I'm not afraid of, when I come to class, graduate classes especially are interesting. Undergraduate could be funny too. But I would come to the class and I would say, I dare you to stump me. And I'd watch their faces saying, who the hell does he, excuse my English, what does he think? And then finally, when they're just at that point, you pompous, so I'd say, and when you stump me, because when you stump me, I'll pay you $5 for stumping me. Jamie Hamilton, I said, he posed a question, and it's a question I had not considered. And so I am there thinking about this, and that son of a gun had the nerve to say, come on, Dr. Yearwood, pay up. $5. I said, wait a minute. And I started thinking about the question. And ultimately, what happened is, I came up with what was a tentative sort of a response to the question. And he still wanted $5, and I said, no way, $2.50. I answered part of the question, you sucker. But, students know stuff. Students understand stuff. Sometimes they can explain it in ways that we might not have thought about that helps their peers. So when we come to engagement, I'll share an aspect of engagement that you ought to consider. So I put this all up for you to really look at, because 21st century presents challenges, but 21st century presents a lot of opportunities as well. Okay, you're probably used to presenters just presenting and continuing on. Time out. Come up for some air. What thoughts do you have relative to what we've talked about so far? And he's saying in his mind, would you please go away, move away from me? No, I'm not.
I'm not a formal instructor, so I'll say that when we do.
No, that's fine. You're doing fine. You're doing fine. You're doing fine. And don't ever think that you're not you preface it by saying you're not a formal instructor. All of us have the potential to be instructors, to be educators. Some of us are more trained in the art school of thought of, but everybody has something to share. So basically, that's all I'm saying. What up there strikes a responsive chord with you, or what you've heard so far you think, hadn't thought of, here's something to ponder.
Not to cheat, but the first one, having it be a place for exploration. You tend to just deliver.
Right.
And you measure what you deliver. You can't measure explore.
So true. So true. One of the things I'm doing here for you, and sometimes it isn't very obvious to some people, but this is intentional. The way I am presenting here is exactly how I teach. And I'm offering possible suggestions for interactivity, because we tend to just dump and we go on and go on. And I like to come up for air every so many minutes and say, okay, fine. Take a minute and write some notes to yourself about something you've heard. Faculty, I want you to encourage and feel comfortable with silence sometimes and thinking space sometimes. All too often we ask a question, you know how quickly we turn around and answer our own question? 3 seconds. We don't don't even wait long enough because we're not comfortable with silence. In graduate classes, when I ask a question, I sit there and I fold my arm because it's a multi-part question. And I would say to those graduate students, I am comfortable with silence. Ultimately, somebody, it gets so bad they have to break the silence. You know? We need thinking time sometimes, and we don't do enough of that. Okay. Look at transportation. Crude way of looking at it, certainly an evolution of. Would you want Terry? Terry, would you be comfortable coming to work or coming to this conference in a horse and buggy? Today? This morning? Not in this humidity. It was just, okay. So she's sending me a quiet signal. Don't ask me any more questions. And you think that's going to deter me? Not one bit. Transportation, modes of transportation has evolved. And we have evolved with it, and some people, I could bet, resisted it initially because it was strange, it was new. They weren't very familiar with. To some extent, we are conducting educational practice today in ways it was done hundreds of years ago. And we have all these modern tools. And I'm not an advocate of just using technology for using technology's sake. There has to be a reason why you're using technology. And it has to have an added value benefit here. TSA, not my favorite thing. You know? I have implants, you know, from too many crashes and stuff on bicycle and who knows what. And so we always have to go through where I get a pat down, you know, or you get treatment for those people who have implants. But I want to be safe in flying. What's the alternative? There is no viable alternative right now to those practices. And so it does make sense. We change. I've used just about all of these technologies. As I mentioned to you, I developed my first multimedia module. And in 1989, I was actually experimenting with distance education. I would develop these multimedia modules. You might have some feel for this, Gary. And I use an authoring system, and I package it on something called a floppy disk. Some of you know that. I would send it to students. They will expand it, and they can see lesson content and questions and whatever. And then included in that was the exe file to package it again and send it back to me. And that's how I did correspondence-like courses in 1989, 91, 92, through mid-90s. You got it. I mean, you know, why? The chalkboard is great. I've used overhead projectors. Every year, I'm one of 3 faculty that we get together, and we have a group of faculty that have these technology training sessions where they're encouraging faculty to use technology. And I've showed up and I've asked for an overhead projector. Worked great for me, for what I wanted to do, some of what I wanted to do. What's the technology that you want to use? Don't start there. Rather, what is it you want students to know, understand, and be able to do? Or what is it you want to do that you cannot now do with traditional classroom tools? And then there's a rich array of tools. I have sessions that I used to conduct in apps, using apps in the classroom, the faculty. How many of you believe this? Ah, come on. When I'm stumped and I want something, where do I go? The web. But you're thinking this has got to be a trick question, which is why you're not answering, right? Yeah, because that is also true. And so what do we have to do, faculties, staff, librarians? Especially librarians. We have to teach them how to evaluate content. Because they can find all kinds of stuff out there and they think it's true. And it is not necessarily. I have to hustle along here a little bit. So as you think about the 21st century and you think about the challenges facing us, what I want to stress to you and what I want to emphasize alongside and support Callie's work is that education is changing. It has already changed. We used to have discussions about, should we use PowerPoint and how we should use it and convincing faculty to use other kinds of technologies. We don't have those kinds of discussions today anymore. We're talking about how are they working and how should we best use them, best practices. That train has left the station for those people who are resistant. We're in a different era. And a need exists for us to use the tools that our students are familiar with, that industry and businesses are expecting them to be able to use and use effectively. And part of our responsibility is to teach them how to do this. Use the tools, find what you want. Efficiency, accuracy, and a whole bunch of things. I'm deliberately going over these, and you notice I am not doing what? I'm not talking. I'm not reading them to you. You can read as well as I can. And I don't believe in reading my PowerPoint back to you. If I want you to read a PowerPoint, what I do is I stop talking and I give you a chance to read it. And then we can talk about it. But how many times are faculty doing that? That's not education. You know what? If that's all you're doing, you may as well print it up and give it to students. To me, the question becomes, what's the value-added piece here? I put that up there about tools. Then let's talk about tools and how you use tools. I'm priming the pump here a little bit. But let's not use technology in ways that does not add value to our work with students. Let's think about purposeful use of technology. Let's think about how is this tool enhancing or adding meaning or adding value to what I'm trying to do with students. And it need not be in an open environment like this, face-to-face. It also can be in online education. My wife is teaching classes online now. I finished up one last semester online. And I gotta tell you, it's a heck of a lot of work to do it well. But there's shared joy and pleasure in doing it well. And we build in a lot of different things for interactivity. So if you come to my online class and you think you're just going to read, no. You're leading a blog this week. And next week you're contributing to that blog. And the other week you're probably evaluating the blog. But you're playing different roles and you're learning how to do this. My wife has interactive kind of exchanges. Well, my students know me that when they write something, and I know they're writing, I get to see it, and I'm saying, this doesn't sound like them at all. There's something here that I wonder to what extent they understand this. So guess what we do? We meet live in Collaborate or Zoom in the classroom, and then we talk about it. Now explain to me, convince me that you really truly understand this. There are ways to assess students so that you know that they're doing the work and they're getting the benefit of the work that you're doing with them.
You'll never learn a lesson.
I need to stop this. Let me cut up the volume a little bit so that you can hear this back there. Communication.
You'll never learn a lesson. You'll never learn a lesson if I clean it up every time.
She's talking. She's making a point.
I don't think so. You're going to bed. Yes, you are. Yeah, I'll tell you. You will tell me.
I thought I did.
No, you didn't. You talk bad words. It's my face. It's now not happy.
Why you always have an attitude? Yeah, you always have an attitude with me. Come here, I'm talking to you. No, you do have an attitude. No, every time I have something to say, you have to give me. No, you have an attitude about everything.
Now tell me how I could have communicated the message here, the central message of, communication is taking place, obviously, but is it effective communication? How easy would it have been for me to explain this to you versus to show you in a video? I couldn't do it very well. The point I'm trying to make here, faculty, is that there are multiple ways of conveying information. And video is one great way to do this. And here is the caveat. You do not have to create all of the videos you need. Students know how to do this very well. And I give them assignments. And the assignments are varied. And so there are multiple ways to demonstrate to me that you understand a particular concept. Or you understand some aspects of whatever it is that I'm trying to convey or teach you. And so students do some of this work. And then I aggregate it and put it in Blackboard, and guess what? The entire class benefits from this. Yes, there's a little humorous side here, but there's a serious underpinnings to some of the things that I'm showing you. And I'm trying to model aspects of how you can effect some of the changes in education as well. And there are tools available to do this that just about everybody, even all the way down now to grade school, know how to handle or how to use. Talked about this already. Suffice to say, sometimes you may need to teach students what their role is and what role they can play in education. So here's a model I want to share with you. It's a three-letter model. I call it C. Sounds like S-E-E, but it isn't. And I think these three letters convey a lot about educational practice, or the potential to change some aspects of our educational practice. You remember this? This is what I was waiting for. Once I heard that, there, I knew I was what? Connected, right? Connection is huge. All of this was just confirmation for me, man. Life was going to be good going forward now with my technology. And guess what? Just as artificial entities and robots need to be connected, we humans also need to be connected as well. Technology, telephone is a good example. You ever talk to somebody and they hang up? You lose the connection, what happens? What does the technology do? It automatically hangs you up too, right? There's a constant stream and back and forth of information to ensure that connection that's made is continued, but it's only continued for a period of time. You cannot expect that or think that if you made connections with students, now that connection is going to last for the entire period, because it may not. You're going to have to find ways to reconnect with them periodically. Multiple ways of connecting. Kind of know the person who's inside there, featured in some of those, doing some of those crazy things. What purpose do you think this slide serves? What purpose does it serve? More than one way to get somewhere? Lucinda? Along with the freeze, said that my wife took that photo with 20 below and she says, I'm never doing this again. Part of what I'm trying to show here is that there are multiple ways to connect with individuals. And you know one of the ways that I use to connect with my students from day one? I want to know who my students are. Why is it important for me to know who my students are? It makes it harder for me to connect with them. If I know something about each of my students, that becomes an opportunity for me to connect with them. And once I have that connection, I can leverage that connection in a number of different ways. Connection is extremely important. Familiar with cell phone crashing? Anybody?
No. It looked really nice too.
It did? Good, good. I was hoping it would look good.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll get the free food and whatnot.
Yeah, it's great to get the free food.
Are you answering what I'm saying?
No, I'm on the phone with somebody. Sorry, I don't mean to be rude.
What was that?
I just said I was on the phone with somebody.
Oh,
The guy next to me asked me if I was talking. The guy, he's talking about me on the phone or something.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. It's weird. Yeah, no, we're getting on pretty soon. Yeah, me too.
Do you know what Terminal Spirit arrives in?
Yeah, I think it arrives in like Terminal 3.
Okay, so you could just text me which terminal it is?
Great, yeah, I'll text you later. If you didn't believe me, I'll double check and I'll just text you.
No, maybe it'll be okay. I'll just look when I get there.
Yeah, you can just look it up when you get there. That's probably a better idea.
How late is your flight, Clay?
It's like 20 minutes late, I think. I think it's probably gonna be about 20 minutes.
Is that your sister with you?
No, I don't have a sister. Why do you ask?
I feel like answering some questions.
I'm sorry?
I feel like you're answering my question.
No, I'm talking to somebody. It's my friend.
I'm at the airport.
Yeah, me too. I'm sitting here at the airport, just waiting to get on the flight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
I got a B+.
Oh, a B+. That's good. Congratulations. That is not bad. You know what? Reception's kind of bad over here. I'm going to move over. Oh, it's better here. It's definitely better here. No, it's delayed for probably 30 minutes.
What do you want for dinner?
Oh man, I could go for anything. Maybe a burger tonight, or burger and fries, pizza, you know,
Where are
something.
the kids at?
I don't have kids. Why do you ask?
Hey, you want to go out later?
Yeah, definitely. Like as soon as I land, you know, let's go out.
I'll meet you about 6 o'clock at the house.
Okay, fine. 6 at the house is great. That'd be perfect. Got to take the flight first. Oh, huh?
Oh, are you talking to me?
No, I'm on the phone.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. No, it's just a girl next to me. She was just talking to me.
Okay,
while I
well,
was
I'll
on
talk to you later.
the
then.
phone. Okay, perfect. Talk to you later. Great. Okay. Love you too.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay.
I'll text.
You know the thing that used to bother me? I only got one side of the conversation. You know, the other person's there talking. So, I mean, this is really nice. But this is a creative way to make what? Fun of a what? Of what? A cultural, although sometimes I think a lot of cultures are doing this, you know. Fun to make, that's interesting way to make fun of. You're trying to think. I'm forcing you here to be a little bit more creative in terms of your thinking. Be way out there in terms of your thinking. What do you think I'm looking for? A way to make fun of a potentially uncomfortable situation. Person right next to you is talking loud and, I mean, it's just annoying, you know. Faculty, staff, librarians, everybody else who's involved in working with students. What I'm trying to do here is get you to think differently about educational practice. Don't limit yourself. Go outside of the traditional norms, right? I use videos quite a bit, and my students start using videos quite a bit. And the videos start out like this at the beginning of the semester, and the videos take on a much more serious note because now they're tailored to the instructional activity or whatever it is that we're doing in class. And I am not creating them all. My students are helping me to create content. You have technology staff that are available to help you with get started with some of this. Your students can help you get started with some of this. Education is changing, so how do we change with it? Not for change's sake, but maximize the time that we have, the limited time that we have with students. These things can't be developed in the classroom, so guess where did they get developed? Someplace else. And students don't realize that what I'm doing is giving them homework. They dread the word homework when I give it in the traditional way. Now my homework becomes somewhat different. Humans are social. emotional, psychological creatures. Connection is not some luxury. We all crave it. We all need it. And I'm saying to you, let's start using this as a tool, taking advantage of this tool in educational settings. This group right down here, this group inside here, I want you to use your cell phone, go out and tell me something that you find out on the web about attachment disorder. This group over here, these first 3 rows, I want you to find approaches used to treat attachment disorder. This group back here, I want you to tell me whether you buy this notion of attachment disorder or you don't buy it. You're searching on the web, grab your smart device. This group over here, you're going to tell me one pro and one con of attachment disorder. Go. Okay, over here, what are you finding about attachment disorder? Anybody, quick like. Go ahead.
There's not a lot of research about whether it can happen after since 5 years old.
Right. Generally, it's happening when they're younger. You know, what did you learn about it? It's a phenomenon of what? Akin to something like abandonment? Okay. What are you finding over here? Go ahead. And maybe one of the things my wife would tell me is, and nurses will tell you, just hold the child. Try to bond with, encourage more bonding activities. What are you finding up here? Go ahead. She just looked away from me. Yeah, I'm not going to get away. Go ahead. Right. Right. That's really what it is. They're social creatures wanting to connect with another social creature, and you might be denying them that. Over here, anybody found something they want to share? Go ahead. Right. There's what? Not enough? Right. It is and it isn't. If you do a search of ABC and 60 Minutes, they did some pieces on Russian babies in orphanage. Right. 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 Okay. Yeah.
According to what I found out, a person's attachment style is permanently established before the age of 3.
That was alarming to me. And that's what the pediatricians or people who work in prenatal, that's something that they talk about quite a bit, especially with babies who are born from alcoholic or drug those kind of situations are born into it with some aspects of it in the system. Go ahead, in the back. Physical that then manifest themselves in emotional, yes, contexts. Yeah. And you know, again, too, there are various ways of looking at this, and there are pros and cons to the arguments of, and today the problem might be manifested itself in other areas. Example, we have a situation like this where teens are saying, hey, we get to the dinner table and that's all you're doing. You tell me not to do it, but you, parent, you're doing this. And so there are some serious issues at play here, and I'm not a sociologist, psychologist. I'm just relating some aspects of what I found in the literature. And I'm using this really as an example of how we can have rich discussions about content with students using the electronic devices that they have with them. These sources of great information are available. Now is how do we teach them how to responsibly use this? You know, in class, students would sometimes have their phone there, and I can see them looking down, and sometimes they're looking right at me, man, and I can tell there's no way. They're pretending they're not in their heads. They're under the table really firing away, you know, and I have devised several different strategies. Okay, time out. 30 seconds. Get it out of your system. Use your phone. Send that tweet. Do whatever the heck you want to do. Go ahead, go. And after 30 seconds, I said, put it away. And they put it back on the desk. I said, no, put it away in your briefcase, in your whatever, because I'll give you another 30 seconds. And sometimes that's all they need to know. Because their cortisol, and what's the other? Cortisol is what? The stress hormone, and what is the happy hormone? Dopamine. Yeah. And so this is the situation we face with our students today. The attention span is shortening, and we have to deal with. And we have to come up with strategies. Educational practice is changing, and students are bringing their entertainment systems to the classroom with them. How do we now find ways to employ those in ways that are productive? Gotta hustle along here. I had a colleague who taught his mom, who was 82 years old, and his dad was 86, how to text. He says, I regret doing that. He says every day, every time during the day, I'm getting texts from them now. They've become so tech savvy. Faculty, how are we keeping up with the changing times and our educational practice? We can't continue to do things the way they used to be done. A paradigm shift has occurred or is occurring, and we need to get on board with that. And I want to caution you, don't just adopt technology for adopting technology's sake. Please don't do that. I took a graduate class of PhD students into a lab, and I purposefully took them into the lab to talk about technology in education. And then I said, you have 5 minutes. I want you to develop a piece about or think about, just organize something to showcase or talk about some aspect of technology in education. Guess what they did? Almost without a doubt, almost all, 15 of them, 14 to be precise, started PowerPoint and started building something in PowerPoint. Jeez, that's not what I wanted. But that's how they interpreted it. And these were educators themselves at other institutions. Just so happened they were pursuing a PhD. And I was the instructor, teaching a technology class. And because I'm teaching a technology class, they thought that's what I meant. I had a student tell me something which was the best thing he said to me. He thought I would be offended. He said, I have to tell you that I came to this class wanting to learn about technology and education. And he says, you're probably not going to like this, but I've become a skeptic about, and I really am purposefully thinking about how I'm using technology and what I need it. And I said, good for you, because that's what I wanted him to do. Think about it. If you're going to use it, the question has to be, what's the value-added piece that you're creating from using that technology? There has to be a value-added component. There needs to be. In my classes, I'll do a 1-footer or 2-footer. When I do a 2-footer, you gotta understand that because that's going to be on the test. Lots of factors influence and connection that you need to be aware of. And there are some of them. Connection is extremely important, but you have to understand that there are various things associated with connection that you have to take into consideration. Those are some of them. So what am I advocating? I'm advocating for something called a learner-centered perspective, not a teacher-centric model, which is what the old way educational practices used to be. And so these questions are questions you should be considering relative to this learner-centric model of classroom instruction. This is laid out really nice because in this classroom, we can turn to somebody, you can have a discussion, you can move around. You have mic systems. The smart classrooms are even better But you've got to be careful there, because I've heard students say to me in some of the research that I was conducting with colleagues, I get confused with all these voices and the intensity of them and all this gee whiz thing happening around me. You've got to be careful. Think about what you want to do and purposefully go about trying to use that. Everybody knows about this in terms of how this works. And if you don't, you need to. This is from whom? Who popularized this? What's that? Bloom and his associates. Right? And so, what's the dominant form of educational practice even today by some faculty? The one right at the very top. And I'm saying to you, we need to move away from that model. Get students more actively involved in their education, and having to teach it, you know all too well that if you have to teach something, you learn it twice and more sometimes. Why not give that opportunity to students in our classrooms? A lot of ways to think about educational practice. A lot of methodologies, and I know you grew up in a law school with the Socratic method. It is but one method. You have to start supplementing it with a lot of others, especially in the 21st century. Back then, it was the leader, the person with all the understanding, leading this along. We have capable people in our audiences who can help to facilitate aspects of this. Okay, you got the picture. Would you use it? Yes or no? Some people say for number one, yes. For number two, no. The legal answer, it depends. And if you get... If you have a nervous bladder, this bathroom is going to be problematic for you. You'll never be able to go. If you don't connect with students, how are you ever going to engage them? Engagement typically takes place in the classroom at mostly one level. Which of those levels do you think it takes place at? Which one? Peers? Sometimes. No. The one that sometimes the engagement is, or attempt at engagement, is presenter audience. Persons speaking all the time and they hope to get some sort of engagement in far as, oh, I connected with you, you take notes, and it stopped there. I promote engagement at multiple levels, and there's strategies for doing this as well. Incidentally, in your handout, I have a list of some people there, some must read. I want you to add one person to that list who's not there. Well, actually, two people. Is Meyer on that list, Richard Meyer? M-A-Y-E-R. If he's not, you need to add him to that list. Meyer has done extensive work on multimedia learning. He is the foremost authority on multimedia learning in the country. And this is not just my opinion. Also, John Medina, M-E-D-I-N-A, 12 rules for education, and these are brain rules. And I know brain rules is the hottest thing now these days, but it's well worth looking into. It's a simple, easy read. He's a molecular biologist, and John Medina talks about things like repeat to remember. And then he says another law, remember to repeat. And he looks at when students are exposed to content, imaging, he looks at the brainwave activity, and he looks at people who repeated that content and people who did not. And the people who did not repeat the content or revisit the content, their brain looked exactly, areas of the brain look exactly